Hey, I'm Ruaridh Ormiston from Kingussie up in the Highlands, and we've just started a Scottish Rural Party, myself and Alistair Fletcher from Bishopton, who's down in the River Clyde.
And what are you hoping to achieve?
Well, we want to represent the rural people of the Highlands and Islands and to ensure that their voices are heard, because most of the parties in Holyrood, I feel, are very central belt orientated and they don't always think about the true rural issues.
And what are the first issues that you want to tackle?
Well, sustainable communities would be the first thing, to ensure that the old folk are looked after, there's good care, there's housing, and that there's things to encourage young people to stay in the rural Highlands and Islands rather than to leave and go to the cities.
And what do you feel about accommodation, like houses being sold off and incomers kind of renting them out?
Well, it's a big thorny issue. I was down at Ardnamurchan last weekend, and there's huge tracts of lands down there where I would imagine all the houses are second homes or holiday accommodation of some sort. And there's very few jobs, especially as you drive down sooner, there's very few jobs for people. And there's no housing, so the locals have drifted away, and that's just one example. It happens all over the Highlands.
Can you tell us a wee bit about your background?
Well, I've lived in the area for 60 years. I'm 60 years old now. But our family have been here for 150 years, originally coming from Dale, and they've been involved with these Highland ponies for 150 years here in Badeney. The ponies we can trace back to two that were bought in 1833 from John Captain and Cora Hoyley, famous cattle drover. So I don't think anyone has got quite a heritage in Highland ponies as what we have.
And what about Highland cattle?
Yeah, we've always had Highland cattle. My grandfather was a butcher as well as a farmer, hotelier. So yeah, we've always had cattle too, and black-faced taps. My great-grandfather used to breed black-faced taps up in Guy. And when he retired down to the village here, that was his main hobby after the ponies.
Do you think we should be selling vast tracts of land to foreign investors and businesses?
The short answer to that would be no. There's not enough individual land ownership in Scotland so that the smaller people and families can have the chance to live in the land and experience what rural life really is about. If you go to Europe, it's quite simple. Most countries wouldn't allow land ownership like we allow it, where anyone can come in and buy what they want. And round about this area, we've got Anders Poulsen, the wild land in Glenfeshie, Glentromie and Gaelic, and I admire a lot of what he's doing, and he employs locals and invests a huge amount of money, and you can see in the long term how animals will come back into the landscape and things will be a bit more balanced again. But 2 miles from here we've got Standard Life and Aberdeen Investments, we've got Brewdog about 6 miles away. And these people are buying for entirely different reasons, and it's simply for profit through carbon credits, tree planting, etc. And they take money from the government to do this planting, fencing. A lot of it scientifically is just wrong. It's been proven by experts that what they're doing is not advantageous at all. And then huge amounts of money going into peatland restoration, which to me is questionable as well. And at the same time, our schools are falling apart, our health services are in dire straits, and we can't even provide care in the community. But I think they've just awarded 20 million for another peatland restoration tranche of money, and my poor mother with dementia couldn't even get a carer to come and look after her.
Shocking. And what about the roads?
A lot of the roads are sadly needing a lot of maintenance, especially up in parts of Skye. And our own A9 here, which is within earshot of us, really needs to be finished and jewelled. But there's a lot of other roads in Scotland that deserve some investment as well. And where do we find the money for that? And we see all these companies coming in and investing in green renewables, huge wind farms, battery storage units, piling lines, and they're siphoning millions and billions out of Scotland. It's all foreign investors. Why are we, as a Scottish country, not benefiting from them ourselves and investing back in our own infrastructure? Yeah, one of my major concerns at the moment, and it's a concern of many people in the Highlands, and although we don't see so much of it here because we're a national park, is the industrialisation of the Highlands with windmills or wind turbines, not so much solar panels, but additional transmission lines, battery storage and everything. And it's all foreign investors. One of my friends was pointing one out the other day, and it was a pension company from New Zealand. And how are these foreigners being allowed to benefit from our natural renewable resources and we're not doing it ourselves? But worse than that, the community councils in the areas involved are not being listened to at all at the planning stages, and near their Highland Council, and the Scottish Government just rubber stamp it. If you go up to Caithness, some of the areas in Caithness between Liveston and Thurstow, and the A96 east of Keith, it doesn't matter what direction you look, it's either the battery storage or pylons or windmills, and we're taking away the natural beauty of the country, and that's one of our major resources.
What do you think about the changes to moor burning laws?
Quite disappointed, really. It's almost as if the people writing these regulations don't understand the hills and the hill people. We've recently had the terrible fires down around Loch and Dorb, and the areas where they were able to check the wildfire was areas that had been burnt. Also areas that were grazed by livestock actually saved some of the houses from being burned down. And you can't just let Scotland grow wild. It's a lovely idea to remove livestock and just let everything get on with growing, but I fail to see the benefits from it, because those wildfires probably released more carbon than any amount of rewilding would do in several decades. So grazing and controlled burning needs to be in the toolbox so that people can mitigate against these huge fires. I went to college and did agricultural engineering at Auchincruive and Bell College, and then by accident ended up in the oil drilling industry and spent 40 years all over the world drilling for oil and gas. But at the same time, because it was equal time working, I was at home as well. So I've managed to remain a crofter and a farmer, Highland pony breeder, pony trekking centre operator. It's almost like I've had two lives, and I've been involved in the community throughout. I'm currently chairman of the community council in Kingussie, and I've been on that for about 10 years, and before that I was more than 10 years in the community council in Newton Moors. So yeah, always very interested in local politics, if you'd like.
I see you were using Monil collars on your cattle. Why did you invest in them?
There was a few reasons I did it. I've been following No Fence for years, and I think it was at the end of last year, my old pal Rob Wainwright out in Call got the Monil collars, and they just seemed like a better collar to me because they're rubber, they're on top of the net to get more sun, and we got them initially to stop the cows crossing over the River Spey, and also down at the bottom of the meadow to keep them back from the fences so they're not teasing the neighbour's bull. But we, out in Bermudish Moor and places, we use them for managing the grazing a bit better. And although I've not used them for mob grazing, they can be used for that as well. But you can sit at night in the house, and if you're thinking something's going to calf, you'll see when it goes away on its own and it starts making arrangements. So you don't have to come down and check every few hours. It just makes everything easier, yeah.
And you have one on every cow?
I have one on every cow, but then I don't have that many cows nowadays. Yeah, the meadows here that we've just been down looking at the cows and the horses used to be the low ground for Ruthven Farm, and we've been on it for over 40 years. And back in 2003, I won the RSPB Scottish Lapwing Award for it. And I went down to Stoneleigh to the Royal Show for the overall award, and we were runner-up to the Welsh. And the trustees of the RSPB spoke to me, and they said they didn't understand why we had so many birds on the ground. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, you've got so many horses and cattle, we can't understand why there's not more nest trampling. And you've actually got the highest density in the whole of the UK, which I was really surprised about. And at that time, we grazed it a lot more than we graze it now. It was almost like a billiard table. But my father used to say that he believed it was nature at work, that the lapwing would keep the animals away from their nests, but also that the animals themselves would keep things like badgers and foxes away from the lapwing's nest. So, you know, it was nature working in harmony.
What are your views on inheritance tax?
Unfortunately, I don't own very much, so it wouldn't apply to me. But I think what the general public and the government fail to realise is just how low the profit margins and turnover is of these farms. And although on paper they look like rich businesses, when you break it down, the profit margins are, I don't think they're ever above 1% of the value. So to be able to borrow money to pay inheritance tax, it would ruin the future of that business. And what will happen is farms will just get smaller and smaller, and any economies of scale that they had to be able to afford modern machinery and sheds and things will go out the window, and you know, food prices will just have to go up. So yeah, I think it's a terrible avenue to take down. And I think Donald Trump had the right idea and said, you know, we don't tax farmers. It's that simple.